I'm delighted to welcome you all to this Junior Great Books Inspire reading and discussion event with our special guest author, Naomi Shihab. We are so excited to be previewing our new series with you today, and we're thrilled that in our new 2-5 books, we are featuring two works by Naomi. The poem, How to Paint a Donkey, which we'll be discussing today, and the short story, Stay True Hotel. And we are delighted that Naomi has agreed to allow her work to be published in our collections and to join us here today. And so, to our special guest, Naomi Shihab. Naomi is a poet, an editor, songwriter, novelist, born in St. Louis to a Palestinian father and an American mother. Naomi's experience of a range of cultures informs her writing. She has received numerous awards for her work. From 2010 to 2015, she served as a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets. In 2018, she was awarded the Lon Tinkle Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Texas Institute of Letters. Naomi was the Poetry Foundation's Young People's Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2022. There is a very long list of prizes, but that's just a quick summary there of some of Naomi's many achievements. Naomi's been a visiting writer in hundreds of schools and communities all over the world, and we are absolutely delighted to welcome Naomi here this evening. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Louise. It's such an honor to be with you and to have pieces selected for your collections. The word inspire means a great deal to me, so I feel embraced by your projects.
That gets us about to the place where you get the highlight of the evening, which is hearing our guest poet read. And for those of you who are following along with the text at home, we do encourage you to think about what questions you have. And if you wish to use the note of F for frustrated and R for ready to start again. And for the panelists, after our reading, we'll engage in a short shared inquiry discussion of this poem. But first, our special treat. Thank you, Naomi.
Well, even seeing those questions on the screen, that was a very touching moment. So thank you. Thank you all for what you do to present work to children. How to paint a donkey. She said the head was too large, the hooves too small. I could clean my paintbrush, but I couldn't get rid of that voice. While they watched, I crumpled him, let his blue body stain my hand. I cried when he hit the can. She smiled. You could try again. Maybe this is what I unfold in the dark, deciding for the rest of my life that donkey was just the right size.
Thank you.
So
You read all the text twice,
I'll
so
I
yeah.
love the idea of reading a text twice, and so here I go. How to paint a donkey. She said the head was too large, the hooves too small. I could clean my paintbrush, but I couldn't get rid of that voice. While they watched, I crumpled him. I let his blue body stain my hand. I cried when he hit the can. She smiled. I could try again. Maybe this is what I unfold in the dark, deciding for the rest of my life that donkey was just the right size.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to hear a poem read by its creator. Such a treat. And if those of you who are following along and listening can drop questions that you might have into the Q&A, we will be getting to those a little bit later. But first, I want to welcome our other panelists who are here with us today to participate in the core activity that all Great Books programs have in common, a shared inquiry discussion. So with adults, generally speaking, the texts are read in advance, whereas students are guided through the reading. But in shared inquiry discussions of all ages, next slide, we encourage observing 5 guidelines that are intended to make discussions as focused and productive as possible. So we've got them on the screen, happy to share them with you. They're part of all of our program materials. And we just took care of the first one, which is everyone needs to have read or heard the text read at least twice. We do encourage sticking to just the text that everyone has in common. So short comments, associations, connections you make are always fine. But if you start to go on and on, I might ask you to come back to what we all have in common. I may also encourage, or others may ask you, what gave you that idea? Where did you see that in the text? So that we can test what ideas we find most convincing as the discussion goes along. We also very much encourage listening and speaking directly to one another. So if you're in a space that allows you to come off the mute and don't have any background noise, please do so. Don't need to raise your hand or wait to be called on. And if 2 people start at once, we'll just say, no, you go ahead, and somebody will come back to you. I'll be in the role of the leader in the shared inquiry discussion. Leaders are restricted to asking questions only in order to facilitate rather than my sharing my opinion or passing judgment on what's being said. So I did prepare a question of the type that we use, questions that we believe have more than one good answer based on the evidence in the text. And we use these interpretive questions as the focus of the discussion. And then participants are encouraged and leaders restricted to asking other questions during our engagement. So I believe we got mostly folks here who know how the game is played. If you've got something to write with and something to write on, I would encourage you to write down the focus question on the screen. Why does the speaker end the poem, quote, deciding for the rest of my life that donkey was just the right size? Please take a moment to note your ideas, your reactions and responses to the question. Looking back at the poem, we'll have the text on the screen again in just a second. But please take a moment to jot down what in the poem connects with or supports your ideas. Because of our limited time, I would probably only give you about 1 more minute for thinking and writing. And Terry, if we can have the next slide, we'll have the text of the poem on screen that way. Apologies if I am moving too quickly for anyone, but would someone like to get us started thinking about why the speaker ended the poem, deciding for the rest of my life that donkey was just the right size?
I think I can get us started.
Thank you, Dan.
So I'm actually kind of surprised that the artist decides that the donkey was just the right size, because she seems so stung by the criticism. So I feel like something on line 11, something happened in the dark. I was kind of surprised by something unfolded in the dark. It seems mysterious. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'd really be interested to hear what other people have to say.
Before we get to that, what gave you the feeling, what was your word choice, that she was stunned, was it?
Stung by the criticism.
What gave you that sense?
Just because she cries and she immediately seems like their first reaction is to crumple up what she's just created and throw it into the garbage can. But there's also something going on with letting the blue body stain the hand. So that seems surprising too.
Other folks, you respond to Dan or give us your reaction. Gina, jump in.
Sure. I was just going to say, I think that maybe this is what I unfold in the dark. To me, I thought that referenced probably when she's by herself and she can overrule that critic voice over and over to herself. And that's what those last lines mean.
What gives you that sense of overruling the voice?
Just because she has to decide for the rest of my life over and over. Telling herself that her opinion matters more.
Gina, I have the same sense when you said deciding over and over. I also have this sort of vision of just like when you lay in bed at night and you think about, I don't know, all the things you messed up or whatever, like the voice you can't get rid of, right? But I'm trying to pinpoint what gave me the sense that it wasn't like deciding for the rest of my life from here on forward, I'm confident in this knowledge that the donkey was just the right size, but that it's actually this ongoing process that you have to work through over and over again. And that's the piece I'm trying to pin down, right? Where is that interpretation coming from? Because that's also kind of where I lean, this ongoing process.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because, the pronouns got me, she, I, they. So, a she, maybe a teacher, had made her crumple her paper and everybody was watching. So she cries. And so then she's going to unfold that in the dark for the rest of her life. And so one side is to believe in herself, to stand up for herself. But I also wondered if also, maybe I have to learn how to take criticism. Maybe, I have to listen to criticism, but then decide for myself. So, throughout life, there's going to be that unfolding of what had just happened.
So the it for you, Helene, that she's unfolding is the experience, or how did you characterize what's being unfolded?
Well, I think everything that happened in the poem is, okay, I got to think about, I was happily drawing a donkey that I loved. And then I got criticized and I cried and I crumpled it up. So I'm just thinking about that. Like I was ashamed. I was upset. I was frustrated. So how do I work through that? When that happens in my life, how am I going to work through that? So I wondered what's the dark, but I wonder if that relates too. That is the dark is those feelings that are going to come in life. So I have to keep learning. I have to keep unfolding, and then make my decisions.
Nick, did I see you responding? Was it to something that Gina had said or to the opening question?
I think this sort of, yeah, what Gina and Laura were talking about, trying to figure out where the sense of like continual unfolding or like doing, deciding over and over for the rest of your life, where that interpretation is coming from. I think for me, I'm looking at line 6 and line 8, talking about I crumpled him and then the blue body stains the speaker's hand, and both of those actions are something that leaves a mark that takes, you know, many tries or a lot of time to kind of erase. You know, you have to wash your hands either really thoroughly all at once, or, you know, it might be like twice or three times over the course of a day to really get a stain on your out of your fingers. And then to unfold a crumpled paper is also, you know, you try to flatten it like 10 times. You know, if it's an important paper, you put books on it to get all the creases out. But yeah, I think kind of the idea that those things are not as fleeting as the initial action. They're things that have to be continually done or repeatedly done.
Denise, I have a thought on your initial question about deciding for the rest of my life that the donkey was just right. When you think about an artist, you think first inspiration. And what this poem speaks to me about with the ending is trust your inspiration. The inspiration that you had in the beginning was the right inspiration at the end, no matter what anyone says.
Feel like that was more a conclusion, or as some people suggested, something that was this ongoing process of reminding about trusting yourself?
I think it was an evolution of realizing that.
What gave you the feeling that it was trust that was evolving or developing there?
Well, like others have said about at night, you know, things going over your mind again and again, and the word unfold in the dark, that through that unfolding, the evolution of like, wow, I really do need to trust myself and trust my inspirations.
Yeah, Kathy, I keep coming away with this sense of this being an ongoing way of being in the world. Like, it's not just like, I'm thinking back to this donkey, and I stick up for myself as this child artist, but really this pressure that you face over and over again when you're putting yourself out there with creative work, and having to have the courage to stand up for that with this active decision you make every day, every time you put something creative out there for other people to criticize.
Anybody willing to give us their reading of the last two lines? Where did
Yeah.
you put the emphasis? Yeah, Ben, jump in.
Maybe this is what I unfold in the dark, deciding for the rest of my life that donkey was just the right size. I really feel it on that. Like it's about the one. And to me, that's, you know, I'm resonating with the comments that are about how this speaks to creative process, because me too. What strikes me is that there's a, for me, in how I approach this, a lot of regret that's mixed in with that love for the donkey at the end of the poem. Because when something just right is just right, I mean, that's a lot of love right there. And the rest of my life, that sorrow, the repeating, the unfolding, you know, going back to things, I think that's something that a lot of us experience at some point. And, you know, there is the gap between intention and execution, but also just, you know, you come to love the things you create. And it's always, you know, the words you didn't say or the love that you didn't act on that sticks around like that. And so to me, the powerful moment in the poem is in the negative. It's where the speaker did not stand up for the donkey when it mattered. And that's the regret that keeps coming back in the dark.
We have just a couple more minutes if anyone wants to jump in, either to respond to something that's been said or give us your take on those last couple lines.
Well, I
I
think,
was just,
oh,
go ahead, Helene.
I think she could keep unfolding and deciding because of the blue body. I mean, you know, a teacher, a guide can coach you to, you know, believe in yourself and your creative work. But for the rest of your life, the power of poetry that gives you an image of a blue donkey is going to remind you for the rest of your life. So I just think the poem is amazing, and it can do, I don't know, the poetry is so powerful to make a difference.
Others, especially who haven't had a chance, anybody want in? We are giving you the mini version of this, but normally we encourage people to look back at what you had written originally to see if there's something there that hasn't come up yet, or if you want to comment on how your thinking may have been affected by what others have said during the discussion.
I just wanted to thank Nick for explaining what happened with the blue staining, because I felt like the artist knew that there was a process that they had to go through. And like when Nick was talking about how much work there is to clean your hands after you let the blue body stain your hand, I think the artist knows that they have to learn.
Other closing thoughts, other thoughts as we close the discussion?
I was wondering about the word on line 11, that it starts saying, maybe this is what I unfold in the dark, and rather than this is what I unfold in the dark. And I just wonder whether that element of doubt and questioning casts a different light on the last two lines. I can imagine the line without that word there and having a different sense of an ending, I think. But the word maybe complicates the path, I think.
Again, thank you to our panelists for sharing your ideas. We give you a little taste of the shared inquiry process. I believe we've been collecting questions in the Q&A. Have we got one to start us off, Terry?
The first question was for Naomi, and what does she think? What did she think of the discussion?
Well, I loved it so much, and I learned more about this poem. I had new thoughts, new insights, even though this is a poem I've been living with for some years now. And I thank you for the thrill of new insights about something that you feel as if you know. Also, I treasure the manner in which the discussion was led, where nobody was wrong, everything was possible. And I feel from Nick's comment about the stain that I had some new insights about why this particular scene would have stained my memory indelibly. And I had never quite thought about that being involved. I specifically have physical memory of the sink and the faucet where I tried to clean that stain off my hands and it wouldn't go away. And this is
you
just
mentioned you had a story about this poem. If you
yes, I do, and I'll tell it in a second. But I just, I never could have known when I was in fourth grade that I would spend my entire life in classrooms. I would never have guessed that. So I have felt a stain on the memories of many children when you're encouraging them to write and they respond with, but I'm not a good writer. I'm not a good speller. I have bad handwriting. They have some stain on their own memories about why it would be hard for them to attempt to write. And I have felt my job as encourager and always as visitor to the classroom to try to help them think of ways they could speak, think of ways they could shape a poem, and if they have a stain, to help them move past it or just delight in it. Well, okay, I had blue hands for a whole day. And donkeys aren't even blue, but I was imagining they could be. And so thank you, Nick, for that insight about the stain. And thank you all for your very thoughtful responses. So my quick little story was I was approached through the internet by a children's book writer in Scotland named Louise Grieg. And she said that she wanted my permission to ask 50 painters she knew in Europe to, or in the UK, to paint a donkey and send her their rendition of their own painted donkey. And she wanted to make a website that had simply my poem and 50 painted donkeys. And did I give her permission to do this? I thought she was charming. I said, of course I do. That's adorable. I love you. And coincidentally, I was on my way to Scotland 2 weeks later for the Edinburgh Festival. So I said, are you nearby Edinburgh? Could we meet? We met in a cafe. We felt like old friends. She went on to do her project. I told her I was utterly impressed that she knew 50 artists she thought might rally to this assignment. And people sent their donkeys to her quickly. And for a few years, she had that website where she encouraged teachers just to look at the poem and the donkeys. And that was it. There was nothing else on the website. But her life went on in a quite exciting way, and she won some big children's book prizes in the UK, and the website eventually came down. I don't know if she had to pay to have it or how that works, but I was very grateful that she made that effort to show, and all the donkeys were fanciful and funny, and some were blue. You know, I don't know the answer to Dan's question about a screen capture of it. I could write to Louise and see if she has one, but I don't think I was smart enough to do something like a screen capture. It was kind of before the Zooming days took hold in our lives. So, I mean, I never dreamed this would be possible, that we could be together talking about the poem.
Maybe we'll have a future website with students' drawings of donkeys. So
And may I also say, I love the picture that you have placed with the poem. Thank you. I love it very much.
I think picking illustrations and selecting illustrations is one of those tasks that the creative team spends a good bit of time on that people may not realize. It's not just commissioning the artists and getting everything started, but choosing exactly which parts of longer works to have as part of the illustrations. So what other questions did we get?
I see one that I would love to respond to.
Please.
From an anonymous attendee. As an author, how does it affect you when someone draws a conclusion about your work that you hadn't seen before? I absolutely love it. And I think this is often the case with other writers I have known. They feel that it's a gift. It's an additional gift of interpretation. I love the quote by Walt Whitman, to have a great poem, you have to have a great audience. So it's that sort of interactive dialogue that's happening there. And if someone tells me they felt something in a poem that I personally have never detected, I feel honored, and I feel as if the poem has somehow been deepened or extended.
Glad to
All
hear
right,
that.
Denise, this is a question for you. Somebody asked, how hard is it to lead discussions with adults versus with children?
Those who know me know I've been doing this for a very long time, and I actually don't find much difference overall. Each group is more unique, and it's harder for me to make generalizations based just on age. I think experience with shared inquiry can make a bit of a difference. So when students are familiar with the process, they do more of what we saw here, people jumping in and spontaneously building on what someone else had said, or asking someone else, saying out loud. The part I was wondering about was this. That can sometimes take a little time for students to get used to having that kind of discussion. And so in an earlier process, whether with adults or children, I find that as a leader, I tend to ask more questions that pull out, what did you think of what someone just said? Or what other questions would people like to ask the person who has just spoken? Whereas a group that's familiar with the process knows it's not all meant to come back to the leader each time. It's meant to be participants having a conversation with one another. So I think in some ways experience makes more of a difference than the age of the participants.
Another question for Naomi. I think you might have answered it in the Q&A, but you can talk about it as well. And what are some of your favorite poems, either that you yourself have written and also of other poets as well?
Well, I am a lifetime fan of the great American poet William Stafford. I think his work came to me when I was a teenager. I found it in my text in school, and I have lived with it. I think it has helped me to live. Also, a little later, when I was in college, I would find work by people like W.S. Merwin, Denise Levertov, Lucille Clifton. These voices would be with me always. I have hundreds of favorite poets, actually. As a child, I loved, some of the classic people like Robert Louis Stevenson, Carl Sandburg, Emily Dickinson, people of my era that were, who were read more maybe in that era. But I felt very, very lucky to have libraries around me, more than one, and be able to um, delve into them regularly and find new friends in literature. And some of the poems I loved as a child growing up by Emily Dickinson have been with me all my life. I don't think we outgrow our favorite authors. I just think we keep growing into them, and their poems keep meaning more and more to us.
I know I was so excited to read Stay True Hotel as well, because I had known your work mainly through your poetry. And so I'm like, wait, stories and novels? I'm a bit more of a story reader. And once I discover an author, I'm one of those who have to read everything by that particular author. And we'll be using Stay True Hotel in our professional development sessions where we teach people to write these types of questions. And so it's wonderful to have a story that's so well crafted. So I'll give you the high compliment that the current story we're using in that regard is Thank You, Ma'am by Langston Hughes, which is
Wow.
another story where every little bit is a bit of a jewel that you can delve deeply into.
Well, this means so much to me, Denise. And Langston Hughes was also one of my favorite childhood people to read. I've read him all my life. I only found his autobiography as an adult in a library and gobbled it up. But I think he is terrific, and I've never gotten tired of rereading his work.
And I'm sorry to say that we are getting close to the end of our time together. It was wonderful that everyone was able to join us. Thank you to all my colleagues who helped work on this. And special, special thanks to Naomi. It was wonderful to meet you in person and to have you read for us. Much
Thank you for
appreciated.
having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care and be well.